This is Michael Popok, Legal AF. Rudy Giuliani has gotten on the wrong side of another federal judge, and this time it means he's not going to be allowed to appeal the $148 million judgment obtained against him by Georgia election workers Shaye and Rudy Freeman, because Judge Shawn Lane of the Southern District of New York bankruptcy judge is disturbed by the flouting of rules and law and legal process by Rudy Giuliani, and he's not going to allow it to happen in his courtroom. There was a hearing, and in the hearing recently, Judge Lane said that he was, frankly, disturbed by the lack of contrition and the lack of compliance by Rudy Giuliani with the laws of his court, particularly the bankruptcy code. Rudy has been playing fast and loose. He's failed to file on time or ever proper financial disclosure for his creditors. He's failed in the last year, or actually in the last 6 or 7 months since he filed in December. He's failed to liquidate or sell any of his assets, including not one but 2 homes, one in New York and one in Florida, to satisfy creditors' judgments. He's got over $500 million worth of disclosed debt against him. He's showing assets of less than $5 million, but yet hasn't done a darn thing to pay off any of the creditors. The largest creditor, and on the creditor committee for the bankruptcy court, is Shaye and Rudy Freeman. And their lawyer said point blank to Judge Lane in the hearing that Giuliani is playing rope-a-dope with the court, that he hasn't done a darn thing. There's been no sale, no settlement, no proper financial disclosure. And when the issue of Rudy Giuliani getting recently fired and having his radio show on WABC canceled came up, the lawyer for Rudy Freeman and Shaye said that she believes that that was done on purpose in order to cut off a flow of income to Rudy Giuliani and therefore to the creditors. So they weren't buying any of this particular process at all. The issue also came up about Rudy Giuliani continuing to defame on his podcast and in other places Rudy Freeman and Shaye, who are the judgment creditors in front of Judge Lane. So that issue is really before 2 courts right now. The federal district court, presided over by Beryl Howell, Judge Beryl Howell, D.C., who was the one that entered the default judgment against Rudy Giuliani for his failure there to comply with discovery obligations and his failure to do other things. 6 or 7 different violations of discovery orders in that case got him a default judgment entered against him as a sanction. Now, Rudy stands up in bankruptcy court and says he wants to have what's called the automatic stay in bankruptcy court. Whenever you initially file, the debtor gets some sort of reprieve from existing litigation. If he's got cases against him, they get put on hold. There is a stay unless and until the bankruptcy court lifts the stay to allow for the lawsuit against the bankrupt to continue. Sometimes the bankrupt, in this case Rudy Giuliani, the bankrupt party, whose estate is in bankruptcy, wants to pursue affirmative cases and spend money that, in this case, the estate doesn't have to pursue it. So Rudy's and his lawyers has told Judge Lane, I want to spend money that I'm not sending to the creditors to go pursue my appeal because Judge Beryl Howell in the D.C. Court of Appeals entered a default judgment against me because I didn't comply with rules there. And the judge says, I could use a lot less kind words to describe what I'm observing, in this disturbing conduct by Rudy Giuliani in my courtroom. So the judge, of course, knows what Rudy's done in other courtrooms and in other courthouses and how he's violated the rules there. And he's having none of it. Look, I wouldn't screw around with Judge Shawn Lane. His reputation is unassailable. And as I've said before on other hot takes and another podcast, the power of a federal judge who's a bankruptcy judge is probably the only other judge who's more powerful is a Supreme Court judge. Bankruptcy code gives federal judges lots of rights and lots of powers, even above a normal federal judge. Yes, he's a federal judge, but a bankruptcy judge, an Article 3 bankruptcy judge, has the most power of any federal judge to order whatever he wants. And he is annoyed and disturbed. I was actually surprised, and I did a hot take on this about a week ago. Knowing Judge Lane's reputation, because I practiced law in New York and in the Southern District, I was surprised he let it go this far. that there had been no trustee appointed, that the case seemed to be languishing, that he was letting Giuliani get away with whatever he wanted since December. That's over. I'm not saying that Judge Lane watches Legal AF for my hot takes, but he certainly is now policing this bankruptcy the way that I thought that he always would, based on his reputation. Landfill space is filling up fast. 35 million tons of food waste goes into landfills each year. But Lomi provides a solution to this climate catastrophe. Food waste isn't actually waste. It's a valuable resource for our planet. Lomi helps to transform food scraps into nutrient-rich food for your garden, houseplants, or yard. Instead of dealing with stinky, gross, buggy compost bins, you can simply transform your waste at the push of a button. Lomi transforms your home into a climate solution, lowering your carbon footprint and helping keep the planet a little greener and your home a little cleaner. And now, Lomi's new app lets me track my environmental impact, earn points for every cycle, and redeem for freebies from Lomi and other great brands. I learned that food waste makes up a huge portion of our personal carbon footprint. By reducing the amount of food I send to a landfill, I'm helping do my part for the planet. Don't miss out on your chance to get the best gift for yourself and Mother Earth. Order your Lomi today. Head to lomi.com/legalaf and use the promo code LegalAF to get $50 off your Lomi. That's $50 off when you head to lomi.com/legalAF and use promo code LegalAF at checkout. Thank you, Lomi, for sponsoring this episode. So where are we? It's an extraordinary thing. That's why I want to talk about the powers of the bankruptcy court. For a bankruptcy judge to say, no, you can't appeal. You're not allowed to appeal the judgment of the judgment creditor who's holding a $148 million judgment against you in this courtroom because it's not consistent with the fair administration of the bankruptcy proceeding. So denied, which means that judgment is the judgment. And Rudy's going to have to deal with it. He's not going to be able to delay the bankruptcy while he pursues some appeal that has no chance of success, which I'm sure Judge Lane, in peeking at the grounds for the appeal, said, yeah, I'm not buying any of those grounds. And I can see the same conduct in my own courtroom in terms of flouting rules and orders of the court. So again, you have the comeuppance of Rudy being hoisted on his own petard because he got a default judgment against him for not following the rules and violating judge's orders. And he's doing the same thing with Judge Lane in the bankruptcy court. The last thing that came up during the hearing, which was very, very interesting, is this issue I started with the defamation. Ruby Freeman and Shaye Moss are continuously defamed by Rudy Giuliani on his podcast and other places, even to this moment. Judge Beryl Howell is going to have to deal with it in her courtroom because she presided over the original case in D.C. But Judge Lane was not happy about it either. And he said, I don't like my processes in my courtroom being used for abuse. So tell your client, this is from the judge, tell your client to stop it. Stop defaming. It's a simple order. So you have now, if Rudy Giuliani continues to defame, it's going to be at the ire of Judge Lane of the bankruptcy court, who will then be able to, throw the bankruptcy book at Rudy Giuliani. Here's what I think is going to happen. He's got an apartment that he owns on the Upper East Side of New York that's worth, I don't know, maybe $6 million in this market. That's getting sold. He's already declared, Rudy, that he wants to live in Florida. So that's getting sold. And the proceeds of that, I think it was taken off the market at one point. Once that's sold in the next 3 to 6 months, all of that proceeds is going to go to Ruby Freeman and Shaye Moss, who are first in line, holding a judgment, their judgment creditors first in line in priority against Rudy. After them are a bunch of unsecured creditors who don't have judgments or don't have liens against Rudy Giuliani. Then they're going to start liquidating his bank accounts. Then they're going to sell his jewelry, and he's got 2 World Series rings for the New York Yankees when he was it's hard to believe he was once the mayor of New York. When he was the mayor of New York, those get sold. That's another, I don't know, $50,000, $75,000. Okay. And then all this money through the bankruptcy court after administration is going to be paid over to the creditors. Once the money is collected, and there'll probably have to be a trustee that handles the sale because we can't trust Rudy Giuliani. Then there'll be an accounting of all of that. And then the judge is going to have to approve a plan of reorganization. He's either going to allow him to do what's called a Chapter 11 reorganization of his life and allow him to emerge from bankruptcy, or he's going to say, no, I don't see any plan here to emerge from bankruptcy. This is a Chapter 7, meaning a liquidation. I think he's going to convert it to a Chapter 7. He's going to liquidate all of Rudy Giuliani's assets, leaving him with the clothes on his back. Take that money, let's say it totals $7 or $8 or $9 million, and he's going to distribute that to the judgment creditors first and then other creditors. So Ruby Freeman and Shaye Moss may get, $2 or $3 million by the time the distribution is over, maybe 6 months from now. That's what I think is going to happen. And then whatever additional monies that Rudy can bring in could also be earmarked and garnished for the benefit of the creditors. I mean, just to play out the theory that the lawyers for Ruby Freeman and Shaye Moss had, that Rudy's trying to cut off sources of income. He may be trying to convert this into a Chapter 7 and liquidate everything, and then he doesn't have to continue to pay into the future. But these judgments, the judge will not discharge these judgments against him or his debts against him unless there's a viable plan for repayment. And so he won't get the benefits of the bankruptcy code. He won't be able to start over with a clean slate at all. We'll continue to follow everything in Rudy Giuliani's bankruptcy, which is just another page out of his playbook of delay and flouting the rules, violating the bankruptcy code, violating federal court orders, just being played out in Judge Lane's bankruptcy court now. Right here on Legal AF and on the MeidasTouch Network. Join us on Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time for our podcast. Now you know why we call it Legal AF. We curate the top 5 stories at the intersection of law and politics. We bring it to you right here, only on this network. If you like what I'm doing, leave me a comment and a thumbs up. It helps with the algorithmic gods, keeps this content on the air. Slide over to the MeidasTouch YouTube. Look for Michael Popok under contributors and playlists. You'll find 1,100 of my hot takes sitting there. So until my next hot take, until my next Legal AF, this is Michael Popok reporting. Heary, heary, Legal AF Law Breakdown is now in session. Go beyond the headlines and get a deep dive into the important legal concepts you need to know and we discuss every day on Legal AF. Exclusive content you won't find anywhere else, all for the price of a couple of cups of coffee. Join us at patreon.com/legalaf. That's patreon.com/legalaf.